Miller Industries, the world leader in towing and recovery equipment.
Hey everyone, it's Kip. Today I'm with Ryan Peters from DewEze Manufacturing. We're going to be installing this clutch pump kit on the Chevron 408 TA.
This is a 700-611 kit that will be going on a brand new Ford 6.7 liter Power Stroke diesel. There are 2 alternators on the truck, so there will be an extra step to it. We're going to go over some of the best practices. Let's get to it. I have Cole Howard here, and he's going to help me get this chassis prepped for installation.
Thanks, Ryan. Let's get started. First step you want to do is go through your instructions. Make sure you read all the text and take a look at the exploded diagram to get an idea of what area of the truck you're working on and any details you may need to pay attention to. Your first step in any installation is to disconnect the batteries, or batteries like this truck, as it has too. Always disconnect the negative terminal, as you have less risk of any arcs. Removing the air cleaner assembly and the intake air tube allows you to access all the components you need to install this kit. This truck came factory equipped with a dual alternator, which will mean that we have to take this alternator off first and have the truck reprogrammed at a Ford dealership to be able to install the clutch pump. In order to do that, we're going to have to remove the belt and the electrical connections and the hardware from this alternator, remove it and retain it in case someone needs to reinstall it. Now, as per the kit instructions, we have to remove both of these. This idler and this idler underneath here has to be moved to a second position. But it's different whether you have a dual alternator or a single alternator truck. So pay attention to your instructions. Now that we have this truck prepped, as per the instructions, let's go assemble the bracket. We've got our bracket mounted into a vise here so that we can assemble the pump and the fittings. We're going to start by prepping the pump and screwing the fittings in loosely, and then we will assemble the pump into the bracket. Always make sure to get the pump centered in the pilot hole and pull the bolts in evenly so nothing becomes out of line. Make sure you orient your fittings for how you will need to hook up your hoses and lock them down with the lock nuts. After you've removed the idlers and repositioned them, we need to remove this fan shroud support. Now that we've pulled the fan shroud spacer, we have access to these 2 additional bolts that we must remove. Last, we have to remove 1 additional bolt. Now let's move on to installing the bracket and the pump into the truck. Make sure to get all of the bolts inserted before tightening any of them. Now that we have all of the bolts threaded in by hand, we're going to do the final tightening by hand with a wrench. Make sure that all the bolts are tightened evenly so that we don't throw the bracket out of alignment. Make sure to remove all of the tape off of the end of the pump shaft. Be careful not to lose the key. A rag with some brake clean or some solvent is good. to make sure to remove all of the tape residue. Make sure that everything is clean for proper seating of the clutch. Install the clutch magnet by starting all 4 of the small bolts included in the package. Make sure all of these are tightened evenly so that everything seats properly. Now install the clutch pulley, making sure to align the keyway with the pulley and the pump. The clutch should slide on easily. Install the center bolt. When tightening the center bolt, make sure to tighten it completely in the first shot. There is Loctite on the threads, and if you do not fully tighten it, it can lock in place. After installing the pulley, make sure you rotate it to ensure that it turns freely. Last, install the DewEze idler pulley on the bracket. Now that we have the electrical installed, making sure to keep it out of any moving parts, we need to install the belt. Since this truck came equipped with dual alternators, we need to cover these electrical connections that we disconnected so that we don't have any issues with shorting. Once we get them covered, we want to tie them down out of the way so that they will not be damaged. Now that we have the belt replaced and all the wires tied up, we're going to reinstall the air intake tube so that we can test run the engine before we install the hoses. Now we'll just reconnect the batteries real quick so that we can go ahead and run the truck. In order to verify that the clutch has everything it needs to operate, you need to check for voltage. Go ahead and use a voltmeter and check the power wire and have an assistant go ahead and toggle a function. From there I can see we got 10.7 volts. It's a little bit low because this truck has been setting in the lot, but that's enough to tell us that the clutch should be operational. It's always best to have an assistant watching up front while you start the truck, just for safety. Well, we just ran the truck, everything sounded good, no belt noise, everything ran smoothly. So now we're ready to hook up the hoses. You have to route the hoses from the back, and that's really up to the installer to determine his best course of action. There are a few tips that you need to have while installing the hoses. You want to make sure that the hoses are tied up so nothing on the road is going to catch them. You want to make sure they're not touching the cab anywhere, because anything that touches the cab will amplify the sound, and it'll make it sound like you have a bad pump or some kind of a mechanical problem. The other thing you want to make sure of is once you get, especially the suction hose up here, to fill that hose with oil before you attach it to the pump, as that oil is the only thing that lubricates the pump. We verified power at the clutch. Now we're going to go ahead and cycle a function to look and see if the armature turns. The armature turned, so we know that the pump is engaging. If you still have an issue, you need to look further back, possibly at the valve body.
Ryan, Cole, thanks again for walking us through the installation of your clutch pump. We know you have resources on your website as well as your YouTube channel. We'll post those links below. If you have any other further questions, please reach out to their customer service department.
Miller Industries, the world leader in towing and recovery equipment.